And so this really begs the question, really, who is this sermon for? Who is this sermon for? Did Jesus only want super saints to live it? Did Jesus just want us to feel like really guilty that we'll never live into it? Did Jesus think this sermon was so heavenly minded that it was no earthly good? Well, thankfully, we don't have to guess at the answer to this. Matthew tells us who this sermon is meant for. So Matthew 5, verse 1. Now, when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. So this sermon is for disciples, followers of Jesus, those who want to apprentice their life to Jesus. Think about that. Jesus sees the crowds, and he actually moves away from them to a mountainside. And then Matthew tells us that his disciples step away from the crowd, and they join Jesus to sit at his feet. Crowds want to watch Jesus from afar, but disciples want to sit at his feet. Crowds want to be entertained. They want the miracles, the show, the fireworks, but disciples want to learn from Jesus how to be like Jesus. And there's a huge difference. At the end of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus will tell his disciples a parable about how to interpret this sermon. He writes, chapter 7, verse 24, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. Notice that Jesus says, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice. What is the firm foundation? What is the rock? It is Jesus' teaching put into practice. It's everyone who follows Jesus and builds on that foundation. And it's not just super saints. The scandal of the Sermon on the Mount is that Jesus actually thinks his disciples should live it. And I think this leads us to our last journeying question. What does this mean for us? What does this mean for us? I want to submit to you that as we embark on this journey through the Sermon on the Mount, we need to ask ourselves, are we ready, like wise builders, to put these words of Jesus into practice? Are we ready to be disciples, apprentices of Jesus, making steps to follow him, sitting at his feet, wanting to put it into practice? Church, are you ready to follow Jesus?